4 more delegates from the Synod offering us their wisdom and reflections, and here very particularly on aspects related to the church. And so 3 of our presenters are here at UISG, and then we have the one who's coming in at 6 in the morning, Sister Leticia, so she wins the prize, maybe, for at least the earliest presentation for today in the given day. We also come Advent. And what a beautiful time. It's a beginning of the church year. And as we do so, we know that even as we end one calendar year and begin another year, for many, this has been a very challenging time. We are in a variety of wars and conflicts. It's also been a new time in our church, a synodal time. And so as a way to perhaps bring those two together, both the Synod and Advent, what I invite you to is just to sit back with an Advent song that's called O Come, Emmanuel. And with it will simply be some images from this past Synod. And so just in a reflective way to begin. Could start the music. What is synodality? Synodality is a path of spiritual renewal and structural reform that enables the church to be more participatory and missionary, so that it can walk with every man and woman radiating the light of Christ. May it be so. Amen? Amen. Again, welcome. My name is Maria Simperman. I'm a religious of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and I have the delight of serving at UISG as the Synodality Coordinator. And I see we now have more people that have come in from Pakistan, from South Africa, from Ireland, from Burkina Faso. The world is definitely here, Switzerland. And so, again, welcome. In this year, it's a beautiful time to both look at where we have come from in light of the synodal journey and where it's calling us next. And so to just give a little sense of the flow, it'll be similar to our last session. We have with us 3 of our presenters and 1 online, and we will have 2 presenters with some silence in between, with then an opportunity for 7 to 10 minutes of conversation online with your chat, your comments, or here in person, questions you might want. And then we'll move to the second 2 presenters and do the same. And at the end, we'll open it up for just comments, questions, your own wisdom and insight from all over for any of the 4, and your own wisdom that comes from this. And those of you, as you're listening, I want to invite you simply to hear what's drawing you in what you're listening to, what's giving you some measure of hope, of possibility, what's asking some questions of you, what might be offering some challenge, what might be touching into your own experience, what might be new experience for you. So we will begin today with the first two speakers, Sister Nathalie Becquart and our brother Tesfaye Tadesse. I will offer a little introduction of each. I think you know some of these are brothers and sisters, and then offer you the question I asked each one to reflect on, because they bring such different experiences that it's a gift to do so. They each have, and they know it, 15 minutes, and we're following the synodal mode. At 14 minutes, I will give them a little notice, and at 15, the bell will ring, and I will just ask them to finish the sentence and to trust that what hasn't been given, you'll ask the questions and bring things forth. But it's because we have such a full session that there's always more. We could have had each of them give their own presentation. And then again, we'll have some silence between each one. So I begin with Sister Nathalie Becquart. She's a member of the congregation of the Xavières, and she serves as an Undersecretary to the General Secretariat of the Synod. I asked Nathalie if she would reflect on the document and her experience and its implications for the global, the universal church, including the papacy, the curia, and that larger international picture in 15 minutes. So, Nathalie, we're just delighted. It'll never end, but we ask you to begin. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Maria. Je vais parler en français aujourd'hui.
Good morning, good day. I will speak. So I'm going to speak in English today.
Et le document qui est sorti, c'est vraiment le fruit de tout ce processus de
So the document that has been published is not only the result of the people who were working in the synod room, but everybody who participated at different stages. It's about the experience that we had in the synod as a school of discernment, as you said it yourself in the definition. So with the definition that we chose. So in this missionary renewal, we are invited to bring more fruits to the mission for the world of today. So not the world 5 or 6 centuries ago, but the people of today. So the final document allowed us to affirm, to acquire synodality as a dimension of the Church who calls for repentance and conversion, while putting in the heart of the synodal dynamic baptism. And I like this citation of paragraph number 2. There's nothing more important in the Church than the dignity from the baptism. That invites us to the co-responsibility of the mission. The final document is divided in 5 parts, and we can say that the line that connects everything is the conversion, the personal conversion, the community, the conversion of the community, the missionary conversion, the pastoral work. So it is in this path that we need to read the different parts of the final document. Another part that will define the heart of the Synod is highlighting the spirituality of the spiritual attitudes. There's another part on the conversion of relations, because this is the synodal church, the relations. Then we will enter in the question of the processes, the discernment and the conversion of the processes, the way we are associated, connected. There's also a final chapter on formation. What I would like also to insist on, and you probably read it, the final document is to be welcomed and to be implemented in this missionary perspective. So the path hasn't finished. We are invited now to really make it practical, to adopt it at every community. The Pope has agreed on it, so now the Pope is entrusting the Church with these orientations, while saying that there's need for authority for the mission and the life of the Church. And the Pope, since the Pope approved it, so it is part of the ordinary teaching of the Church, and it should be applied with authority, and it will be also part of the authentic exercise, so it will be accepted. And the Pope, while doing so, means that synodality is the framework, the appropriate framework to understand the hierarchical mystery, to understand every form of authority. So concretely, we are in the implementation phase, which is a new step, which is very important, and we are all invited to be actors and receivers of this, because it's not the Pope who can just implement it. Each one of us is really in charge and responsible for doing so, and the Synod was so clear because it called all ecclesial realities, parishes, institutes to process it with discernment while identifying concrete means and formation paths in order to suggest practical, and we cite parishes, institutes, societies, associations, dioceses. So now the follow-up of the institutional follow-up will take place. So the synodal structures will give all the possibilities to give lay people, to women, more responsibilities to be able to give more value to the charism. There will be also parallel evolutions at the level of canon law, and we are invited to proceed to put in act new creative ways for missionary activities. And the document invites communities to be more creative, local church to be more creative with this framework given by the document, which is not a static document. At the level of Rome, it's the General Secretariat of the Synod, but also with collaboration with the other dicasteries who are in charge of accompanying it. And a very practical means would be for the following visita ad limina. Each bishop will have to give accountability, and this will be done every year. And we invite you every year to come up with a report to say how you moved forward with this synodality. We also call for attention to particular points, articulations in territories and networks, considering that they are networks, relations, and I will go back to the other points. If the Pope launched all this process, it means that he needs us, and this is what he said at the end. I, Bishop of Rome, I remind myself often that I need to practice and exercise listening, and he never stops putting in practice his listening attitude. So there's a new dynamic circularity between synodality, which touches the people of God, collegiality, and that is the dimension and the role of the bishops, and then primacy of the Pope. But this model touches everybody and is suggested to be lived in all ecclesial realities, where we have superior generals, men and women, some people, communities. So to be able to implement all of this, to come up with a new balance, with a rebalancing based on a global scale, because I was invited to talk about the universal church. So it's about a rebalancing based on the vision of the between, in order to invite everybody to be co-responsible. And it's also very important because it comes to touch our communities, the ways we see and live the universal church, and also in our communities, the central government, the regions, the local communities. The Synod also highlights a decentralization between the Roman governance and the territories. All of this invites us to have a new way of living things within the church, articulation, diversity, and I would like to insist on this, even if consecrated life is already implied in this. We are talking about a new way of making decisions, and I believe that the following speaker will develop this by means of processes of discernment that will make decisions more mature and will call for a new transparency and accountability. You can also see that this strengthening on the local churches is not in order to make them more isolated, to do their own enculturation work. The synodality goes along with the reinforcement of relationships between local churches at different levels. So we need to take care of the two aspects. And also for religious life, we had a whole debate on the episcopal conferences, how they can reinforce their roles. We had no consensus when we talked about this, because this decentralization is to be healthy in order not to lose what can be done at the level of the unity. Now I'm going to see more concretely in the 5 minutes that I still have. So what does this synod imply for the Bishop of Rome? So we said a new way of expressing primacy. So when the Pope agreed on the final document, this was a way to live his authority, and these will have implications, ecumenical implications, and it will touch the different roles of the Pope. Today we have all the churches who came to Rome for prayers, who sent delegates, recognized a certain role of primacy. So he has importance for the Catholic Church, where we have Latin churches and Oriental ones. We also have to look in a more specific way to identify the competences that are for the Pope. So what should be given as autonomy to bishops and conferences, and also the ecumenical domain. It's very, very important. The question of the relationship with Rome is one key question in the debate. For also the Roman Curia, so in order to have really a transparent and listening, to have a more collaborative Curia, transparent and responsive, to have it as a service of Pope and service of Episcopal conferences, so everybody can be in more dialogue and a more listening attitude. So there are great efforts to make the Curia more collaborative and at the listening of the churches so they can work in harmony, and there should be obligatory consultations before publication of important documents. There's also particular attention to the College of Cardinals. We just had new ones with the importance of strengthening their cultural differences, cultural diversity, the question of the place of women, which will continue to be discussed in the Curia. And as the Pope said, it shouldn't stay at the Curia, but it should be a question for all the churches. There's also the question of the Oriental Catholic churches and the Roman Curia. And the last dimension that I'd like to tackle is the Synod of the Bishops, which took place since for decades now. It evolved and it will continue evolving. We saw that we need to conceive now the Synod of Bishops as a process, not just as an event, and to try to find this articulation between the people of God during an ecclesial assembly and the College of Cardinals and the people of God. So all of this invite us to hold and to live the mission and to move forward, because we don't have the same roles, same charisms, and same tasks. But the main objective is to do so, and this is the privileged mean where religious life has a very important role, and that is the formation, because the perspective is to form a people of missionary disciples, and this relies on a vision of integral and permanent formation for all. This means that everybody, priests, religious, sisters, people, lay people, everybody, with also the challenge of being formed all together at the same time. And this is also really something for us to work on. And then it's also an invitation to this very strong call that had consensus at all levels, and that is to strengthen the ecumenical dimension. This is one of the most important points in the Synod. The delegates, brothers from all other churches, said how much it is important to be together. So in the synodal path, we have a role to play, to be a key role to continue in with this path.
There's so much wisdom in this. Let us just sit with what we've heard. If you wish to jot down a few notes for yourself, but just a minute of silence. Our second panelist is our brother from the Synod, Father Tesfaye Tadesse Gebresilasie, MCCJ, the Superior General of the Comboni Missionaries of the Heart of Jesus. And he also belongs to the wide church. And in particular, on November 6th, it was announced that he has been appointed by Pope Francis to be auxiliary bishop of the Archeparchy of Addis, Ababa, Ethiopia. So we thank your community for their generosity, and also you belonging both to religious life and to the wider church. Tesfaye, looking at the Synod and the document in light of what this is asking, not only of religious life, but even more the episcopacy, because you're really holding two spaces right now. What is important in this Synod and document for bishops like you and others, and also priests? So thank you, and he will be speaking in Italian.
Lo Spirito Santo
Well, the
ancora non
Holy
è
Spirit is not among us yet. So I'm not actually ordained, officially ordained yet. I had a PowerPoint, but unfortunately I am without my PC. Does anybody could help me with the PowerPoint? It's a bit too long, but maybe if you just could help me to, move on to the different slides I have prepared in my PowerPoint.
No, va bene, allora, it's okay. Yes, sì, non c'è problema. Va bene. Allora penso che la domanda è un po' grossa, ma
I think
comunque
your question was quite an
chiede il sinodo ai religiosi e poi
important question. What does the Synod ask to, religious and consecrated life, and also those who are named as bishops. And as the final document, number 9, is stating, we are asked to pursue and to continue our daily journey with a synodal methodology, which what does that mean? That means that the journey is already, the path has already started. And this is not always taken for granted. We are called to continue along this daily journey, but with a synodal methodology of consultation and discernment. Now, I would say this is a beautiful result and a beautiful outcome of the Synod, which is the value of consultation, of discernment, both and journeying together. And this is certainly true for religious life, which we believe that they have a long experience, since, of course, they live in community, they live in their institutes of consecrated life, where discernment, consultation, journeying together is part of their daily life. Now, probably synods consider that religious men and women are experts in the field of synodality. It is possible, but I believe this should be the case. The Holy Father, in his note, basically, it is the Holy Spirit which is supporting the synodal path. So the Holy Spirit, which is the gift of the risen one, sustains and guides. I love these two verbs, supports or sustains, because it needs support, because the strength comes from the Holy Spirit, and also guides, guiding, animating, highlighting the correct direction to the entire church, be it not only to consecrated life, but also the life of the episcopal world. Now, of course, the Synod continues, as I said, and the document, the final document at number 17, states the synodal process has made us experience the spiritual taste of being the people of God. Sister Nathalie was speaking about of being christened, of being baptized. We are part of we belong to the people of God because we are baptized. And this, continuing the document, gathered from every tribe, language, people, and nation, living in different contexts and cultures. I love the word this spiritual taste for consecrated life. For bishops, synodality is, one should not be afraid of synodality. There's no fear. It is a support. It's a form of support. It's something you should enjoy. We should be also joyful about, because synodality means journeying together. What are we asked? I mean, what is consecrated life asked? And as we can read at number 65, the consecrated life is called to challenge the Church and society with its own prophetic voice. Once again, so consecrated life, religious life, has a prophetic voice, speaking to the Church, the people of God, and society. Of course, bishops included, since bishops are mentioned. And we do have the duty of listening, contemplating, and following this prophetic voice, doing a lot of beautiful things together. So the witness of communion and fraternity within consecrated life. And this is prophetic. Also living in interculturality, simple life, simple lifestyle at the side of the poor, of the suffering. It's a common, a joint discernment mission that we carry out together, the diversity of charisms. I understand that when during the blessing of the altarpiece, you have 5 saints. You have Charles de Foucauld, Catherine de Bourret, Mary's superior and founding mother, and then other 2. These are charisms joined together in the altarpiece. There's no competition between the saints and the religious. There's no competition. There's a mutual enrichment, and this is required by the Synod to consecrated life, and this is, of course, is extended to the Church. We have to speak about the 4 forms of conversion. I think Sister Nathalie has already mentioned them. I don't think I repeat that, but different forms of conversion in our relationships. How does the relationship of a bishop with his priest, with religious? Of course, if a bishop believes that the religious is there only to keep the school open, or the the clinic or the dispensary with no relationship, well, this is completely incorrect. It's somehow exploiting the consecrated man or woman to the service of the Church, or rather to the service to the needs of the Church. But we are invited to conversion of relationships. Also the way the decision-making processes. How are these processes agreed upon? How do you reach a certain form of dialogue? How can you actually understand what is being done? You need to review processes, and then also conversion of bonds that say, I'm coming towards the end. We are called to be transparent. And in the final document, at number 99, what you can read, if over the centuries, the practice of being accountable towards the superiors, we have to basically be aware that the community has to, let's say, has to be responsible towards authority. I know that, Mary, you have limited us in our sort of presentation, so I want to be faithful to what you were asking us. A bishop has to necessarily report to its community, not only asking, to religious, to lay people, to priests, their responsibility. It's a mutual. So it's a process of discernment, consultation, involving everybody. with no exception, superiors, young, elderly, ill, healthy. I remember it was beautiful because at the synod there was one person who was actually handicapped. He was a disabled person, so representing disability. I also had someone sitting at my table. She's an Australian woman. She's a chancellor. She works in her diocese, and she has a son who is also disabled, who is autistic. And she was speaking about the role of ill people in community life, in the life of a community of faith. How are these people viewed? How are they dealt with? How are they taken care? Resisting also to the pressure of groups, and also the bishop, the parish priest, they all come from the people of God. They have to be liable and also called to account to God and his people, not only about what is beautiful, but also about problems. We have to actually be accountable for our works, for our different activities. When I speak about activities, I include resources. I include our financial resources. I know that's not easy. This is not an easy theme. It's a bit of a delicate one when you have to report and be liable for your financial resources or for all of your assets. Everybody, religious men, religious women, the superior, the bishops, all account to God and his people. The mutue relaciones, which is the relationship between the religious within the church. Who knows how it will, this famous document, mutues relaciones, we have been waiting for some time. I know we have within our groups, within our working groups, we said, why don't you involve the religious who are locally, who are in the field? Couldn't they be involved? And I think that maybe, how much time do I have? Is my time?
5 minutes.
Oh, I still have 5 minutes. Wonderful. Thank you.
La sinodalità anche porta l'esperienza
Synodality is also connected with interculturality. I believe that this is a source of richness that a consecrated life can offer to the life of the church. Maybe not only at intra, but also at extra, so both inside and outside the church. We should live interculturality. So when we speak about consecrated life and interculturality, this is something which is actually meaningful within our contemporary life. If we think about, we don't have actually communities where everybody is the same. We're all alike, because think about our parishes. We speak about a mixed culture. We don't speak about one culture. We have different cultures together. Maybe we could speak about an evangelical culture. So this in the life of consecrated men and women, but also in the life of the local church. So the superior maybe belongs to a given culture, the bishop of another culture, lay men and women to another culture. So if we bring all three together, well, this is a synodal path together, and the Holy Spirit and the Pope is speaking about harmony. So regardless the differences, the different way of speaking, the different way of acting, we have to say that the Holy Spirit is able to create an evangelical harmony, which is something which is a bond among us, which is supporting and helping us. A dialogue of people belonging to other religions or who are with no faith. Sister Nathalie spoke about it, ecumenism, but we should be able to dialogue also with those who are non-believers, the Muslims, Buddhists. In my group, I had 4 bishops from Asia, and they were saying, today in our daily life, we have to whisper the gospel. We have to whisper the gospel. You can't proclaim the gospel out and loud. because it could be viewed as a form of violence. We whisper the gospel. That is their reality, their local reality in Asia. We have to whisper the gospel. We have to share the gospel. Also with those who don't belong to the same religion, because we keep journeying together. The Synod, I think, it opened up this. We, with the presence of people from other religions who were there. I remember that, and this is my final remark. When we have celebrated our Cardinal Miguel, Miguel Ayuso, the prefect for the interreligious dialogue of the dicastery, there were members of other religions who attended this Eucharist. So that was the Eucharist was held in St. Peter's. But Basilica was beautiful, having members from other religions who came to pray together. Well, they didn't share with the deceased the same religion, but just the same ideas, same values, and I would say even the same humanity. Thank you.
Grazie mille. There's so much in there and so many perspectives to bring. And so we just allow for a minute to just soak in what you have heard, and maybe to start chatting for yourself some thoughts, some reflections, both on what our brother Tesfaye and also what our sister Nathalie have offered. And now I just invite you, if you're online in the chat, to put whether it would be some questions or reflections, or if you would like to speak, if you push on the little button that has a hand raised, we'll try to see you otherwise, but it's much easier. And if you're here in the room, we have a few mics, or you have mics right with you, if you'd like to offer a comment or a reflection. But we'll just allow people in the chat to put something down, and also here. We have just the gift of so much richness. So please feel free to write. Please feel free to let us know you want to speak.
María.
Please.
Aquí.
Yeah, please. Gracias.
Soy Adela González, de la Unión Mundial de Organizaciones Femeninas Católicas. Mi pregunta es para el padre. tenemos por un lado que el Papa va a
My
examinar
question is for the Father. On the one hand, we see that the Pope is going to examine the bishops when they come to the limina visits on synodality. On the other hand, you spoke of a certain fear on the part of the bishops of the synodal process. On the other hand, we are the people of God. We want to participate. All the places in Africa, we have many Catholic women in Africa who want to. So how can we, the religious and the laity, how can we help our bishops to pass this exam that the Pope, this test that the Pope puts us to?
Puedo hablar in italiano, sì? Ok. Io penso che quelli che sono
So
chiamati
what I think is that those who are called to be bishops,
il mio nome è uscito ma non ho
I know that
esperienza.
my
Allora,
name is on the list, but I have no experience, so I can't actually express myself. But in my, let's say, life as consecrated person, as religious, I think that bishops need help. They truly feel this need.
penso che sia giusto
And I also believe that it is a very good idea to help the bishops. It's not actually helping the bishops. I think it's what Sister Nathalie was saying, that we all live our own vocation, baptismal vocation. It's not because you're helping the bishop as such, but my faith invites me to live my faith fully as a lay person, as a consecrated person, as a priest. And St. Augustine, what does he tell? I am a bishop for you, but I am a Christian with you, by your side. So I know that there's a bit of, concern and fear, but maybe we can, we can talk and we can try to improve dialogue, and I'm sure that this will be very fruitful. And I think that fortunately the Synod has truly helped the synods to overcome their fear.
There's another question for you
C'è
here.
un'altra domanda che abbiamo qui nel computer. Bene, si è parlato della necessità di sussurrare il Vangelo. Se magari può aggiungere qualche parola in merito. È anche un invito, diciamo, come lo si considera.
quello che ho sentito intanto nel sinodo si vede che la Chiesa è
Well, yes,
molto
of course. In the Synod, we know that the Church is extremely rich. There are many situations, many different situations. The bishops from Asia, we were speaking about the kerygma to preach the gospel. And of course, you cannot do that everywhere. In certain contexts, it's a bit more difficult, and that is why you do it whispering, sharing with your own life what is actually the gospel, what is Christian life. It could actually attract and interest people from other religions. You can't actually do the same. I am Combonian. I was in Khartoum. We would actually baptize a lot, but you can't do the same in Macau or in Taiwan. The situation is completely different, maybe 50 people, which means that there are many non-Christians. So you share, but you share it in a more discreet way, with humility, whispering, accepting that you are a minority, but speaking about the Christ. And this is what I understood from the bishops in Asia. Maybe there's some, parishes in Africa where you can actually, speak out and you can sing and you can proclaim loudly, but not everywhere. That is not possible everywhere.
We have a question, please.
Grazie al panel.
Thank you so much to this panel. Maria Lia, I am a consecrated woman and I belong to an association of consecrated virgins, servants. I would like to ask Sister Nathalie, can she kindly explain the relationship between the authority and those who are community members and the community members? Because I seized a certain fear with bishops, with superiors, because I had the feeling that, of course, on the one hand, you have listening, but when you then discern, and when you do a common, a joint discernment, and if they're all basically at the same standing, they fear losing their authority. Because when you're a superior, you have a certain responsibility for your community. Because, of course, the church will no longer be a pyramidal church. So it will be more of a synodal church. So it will, could you actually explain a bit more about this dilemma? I understand that this kind of dilemma is touching upon different situations, because I would say that from the very beginning, from its origin, it is actually has been set up, it has been built as a synodal church, but it has a hierarchical also structure, because I think this is true and common to any kind of human structure. But we believe that in the church, the hierarchical dimension belongs to the divine nature of the church. But when we speak about ecumenical dialogue, and this has highlighted the fact, and this is really very important, there is no primacy without synodality, and there is no synodality without primacy. So in religious life, you don't have a religious community without a, let's say, superior general or any other form of authority. We can maybe change the name, because you need, but of course it's also true that if you have only a superior general without anybody else, the superior is completely powerless. So because the superior is appointed to be at the service of its or his or her community. And I think that the Synod has really highlighted that, as a dynamic relationship, a life-giving relationship. And so what we have to keep in mind, I'm aware that at the very beginning, this is what people back from my country in France, I know that at the end of the council, some religious lives have decided, let's eliminate every form of authority of, superior general. No, that is not the way forward. That's not the solution. It's the way you yield power, and the way you actually, power has to be at the service, but not. So that is why when we speak about the mission, how to yield your service, it's not a theory. It is actually practical. It is done in the different cultural realities. It is also true that in the different cultural societies, we know that some cultures are still very conventional, are very top-down. But someone in the Synod told me, a patriarch told me, for us, this new way, this new form is a challenge, because we are not actually accustomed to that, because in our country, the bishop has to decide alone. And if he doesn't do that, it is seen as a form of weakness. But this is also true that in other regions of the world, it is no longer accepted. The top-down decisions are no longer accepted, especially when it is a decision taken without listening, without sharing. So we have to understand that we have to gradually integrate the different cultures and the different forms that these cultures bring along. So what I love, these synodal methodology, we had these round tables, we had all of the cultures. The round tables have been truly a source of joy, and has been really a very fruitful experience, because I think that we all need to be listened. And so if you don't yield authority, listening to the members of the community, well, that is not necessarily going to help people to grow. And I'm thinking at my experience, I'm thinking also at the context, and this is true for Europe, it's true for France. The synodal style, the leadership synodal style is the outcome of a consultation, and it is far more forceful, far more impactful, because a decision which is the fruit of a synodal decision is well accepted, while when it is imposed top-down, it is no longer accepted. So I think we have to help everybody to understand that when we do actually follow this synodal decision-making process, our authority is stronger, is strengthened, because it is not only limited to simple decisions that are written in a given document, but it is a different form of strength. And we have to also understand that we have to encourage both participation on the one hand, and responsibility on the other. But the idea is to move forward, not to eliminate one of the two.
I think we're getting right into some of those important pieces in the conversation, and what will leadership that's synodal, and what will membership look like, and how will we walk that, because it's also a question in religious life, in consecrated life. How do we amplify participation for all members, because we need everyone in the reign of God, everyone in our congregation. And then also, how do we recognize the need for authority and decision-making and taking? So these are not limited to the church, but certainly they're important, and to get at the details of it. And so there's the ad limina visits, but what would that look like in a parish, in a diocese? And that was certainly one of the synodal conversations. How do we do that kind of mutual recognition of the other, and to together say, how do we learn what has worked well? We are going to move now to our next pair of wonderful panelists, and I'm going to introduce now Sister Leticia Salazar. She is a sister of the Company of Mary, Our Lady. And a specific ministry that I asked her to look at was through the lens of her service as a chancellor in the Diocese of San Bernardino, California. And so from that lens, I said, Leticia, as chancellor, what are the implications for the local church, the diocese? What difference will this make, this synod and this document? What difference will this make for women, for persons in a parish, both the laity and the priest? So trying to get into some of what we would call the weeds. What does this mean more on the ground? And so, Leticia, we're delighted to have you from California at 6-something, almost 7 in the morning. So perhaps after your first cup of coffee. So again, 15 minutes. At 14 minutes, I will interrupt to just tell you you have 1 minute. Thank you. Gracias. And she's speaking in Spanish.
Muchas gracias. Buenas tardes a todas y a todos.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon. To me, it is a time of great joy to be able to share with this group of religious, because we truly are a gift in the church, with the church and for the world. And that is a reason to give thanks to each other. We all know that we are at a very important stage in the life of synodality. The General Assembly concluded, but synodality now begins. Pope Francis has entrusted us with the final document, with all its content to the local churches. He invites us to implement in everyday life the whole content that this document is offering. It is the voice of the Spirit for the churches. How can we carry out this implementation? How can we live it? The Pope says, with discernment, with creativity, and with a lot of respect, at the pace of our contexts, unique contexts where we all are, to experience these moments of implementation with courage, trusting that it is God's Spirit that continues animating and pushing and bringing new life to the church, doing this with much humility as well as one of the strong pillars, knowing that it'll take time to face and address certain issues that require a change of mentality and new ways of learning. This synod, for me, was a great opportunity to participate throughout the process and to learn from the process. One of the great learnings that this synod in itself represented for me is a transforming experience. It was a school of synodality. In the Diocese of San Bernardino in California, we've taken very seriously since October 2025 this invitation from Pope Francis. So we lived through the preparation stage at the Pastoral Center with leadership groups, with diocesan groups in parishes, at the vicariate level, at the diocesan level, with communities and people at the border, Native American communities, indigenous communities, people at the borders and groups of LGBTQ. And this stage comforted many people, brought many joy to many, because many had not been heard. But it also made others very nervous. To me, participating in the General Assembly for 1 month in 2023 and another month in 2024 was to fully enter into the synodal process and enabled me to learn about the dynamic of synodality. Far from being just an intellectual concept or a narrative, it became for me a transformative experience. It gave me a real sense of what it means to be church and to return to San Bernardino, continuing to build every day and through relations the synodal church. So what happened during the General Assembly? I lived every day with that group, the process of praying together, to listen to the word together, taking time for the conversation in the Spirit. It's about discerning, reaching the points of convergence, also identify disagreements and build together our contributions, our recommendations. All of this transformed me. Synodality is possible. And today I can say that it took time because every day for a month doing this exercise made me realize that synodality is an experience that requires time, it requires patience, it requires perseverance, it requires to make room for others to build this synodal church, requires inner availability, inner disposition, a spiritual discipline, and an attitude that is always of a conversion in mutual listening and listening beyond just information. I managed to understand that it's about learning together to be this church that listens, that welcomes, that is a sacrament of God in the world. It is a prayerful church, humble, learning from others, and all of this takes time. It takes time. Learning takes time, and unlearning bad habits takes even longer. The Synod, as we know, is a renewal in the church. Synodality, the document says, is a path of renewal, of spiritual renewal, and of structural reform so that the church can be more participative and missionary, as the final document says at number 28. This experience allowed us, from God and with God, to identify some steps to experience communion and allow for the participation and to experience the mission that was entrusted to us. As of now, I'd like to establish a parallel with things that we need to continue transforming at the diocese. To me, the meeting with Pope Francis, seeing him almost every day during the assemblies, his attitude of openness and this gift for proximity, this gift of closeness with everyone, everyone with no exception, his smile of openness, his friendly hand, his interest in listening to everybody's stories, that the example of Pope Francis through simple and deep gestures tells me that doing leadership, living a leadership and living a service authority from where we are is done through actual gestures. I wondered, I asked myself, an 87-year-old person as Pope Francis, with his level of activity, to be able to offer that smile at the end of the day is encouraging for anyone. There are two photographs that speak to me a lot. I would like, if possible, to share them, to share a couple of photographs that speak to me about a service leadership in the ecumenical service that was held at the square of the first martyrs, where the first Pope, Saint Peter, was crucified, was executed. This Pope, Pope Francis, as he arrived on his wheelchair, almost to the same place where Saint Peter was executed, there he opens a horizon, he opens a door toward ecumenism. This transformation, where we welcomed our fraternal brothers, but not just since what happened in Vatican II 60 years ago, but at the time that is being experienced now, it's the opening to ecumenism and to this new relationship from the bottom of the heart. Another moment that was very powerful for me was when when Peter's chair was exhibited, was exposed to me, seeing, contemplating the Pope from his chair, a chair that we can call vulnerable, a chair that is capable of living authority from a welcoming service that is completely pleasant and loving. Let us contemplate these two images. These are simple pictures and images.
Estas imágenes,
These
desentrañan
images articulate and show how the gesture of leadership, the gesture of service, she froze,
nosotros mismos no damos.
and what we give
Mi obispo, con nuestro obispo,
in dialogues with our bishop. These images show us how we are to experience of service authority as we welcome all the others. Pope Francis truly embraced synodality in all its meanings and with all consequences.
acciones
Another one of the main actions of the Pope was to change the composition of the Synod of Bishops. The composition, which for the first time included non-episcopal representatives, but religious people, lay people, men, women, that truly led me to a very powerful call in all dioceses. The Pope very clearly said, I recognize that I cannot do it alone. I need my brothers, the bishops, and all the entire church. And that spoke to me about a real circular relation, a truly prophetic moment. I wondered, what composition do we have in our diocese at the Council of Presbyters and Parish Councils, at the management tables? What is the representation we have? The presence of the woman, the presence of minorities in our diocese. Who makes up these tables? How are these tables made up? I think we all saw this image, the final photograph of the entire group, the participants, not just the delegates, but those who cooperated in many ways to this General Assembly. This image, this final photograph, also speaks and tells us that that is the Pope's vision. This is circularity. We're all included. 1 minute, one more minute.
Dios mío, María. Bueno, entonces, otra cosa muy importante.
Another very important thing for me is that we've learned that a multicultural group came in, but we left as an intercultural group in our diocese. This is very powerful. We come from an experience of national parishes And today we've gone from multiculturality to interculturality, and truly the true respect for every culture in our diocese is a very strong value. There are many other things, such as how synodality sets the direction in our diocese, spirituality, formation, how all of this takes new nuances concretely and through concrete steps in our diocese. And to conclude, I think that the decision-making processes, the importance of transparency, accountability, and evaluation are elements that are alive in our diocese, and step by step we are practicing them and making them a habit. I think that it is a major challenge and at the same time a blessing to be on this path, having a map that can guide us with the strength of the Spirit. Thank you for your attention. Thank you so much, Leticia. You have many things to share.
Silence. If you want to put something in the chat, you're welcome to do so. But we'll just take a minute to ponder what has been offered, because there's so much here. Our fourth presenter and wisdom sharer is our brother Mark Hilton. He is Superior General of the Brothers of the Sacred Heart. And we asked him, from the lens of a General Superior, working with religious life and, of course, the Church, what can we learn about the Synod document and its implications for us? In other words, what will this mean for us as religious? And you have used the image of a net, and both needing to mend the net and also expand. And so I look forward to just hearing from you what that means for us. It's both a synodal image, but it's also something that you're bringing some profound pieces to. So to our brother Mark, welcome.
Thank you. In his reflections before the second session of the Synod, now Cardinal Timothy Radcliffe reflected on the resurrection stories as a movement from darkness to light, from fear to hope, and especially to action. In one case, he particularly reflected on the story of Jesus preparing breakfast on the shore of Galilee. The disciples fishing all night, preparing, and the repeated instruction to throw the net again, and coming ashore to greet the risen Lord with a net full to overflowing. This net filled to overflowing became a repeated element across the days of the Synod. Many people wove the image into their interventions, and for me too, it became an image that resounded with the call of the Synod, especially to us as religious. The final document of the Synod turns to religious in a number of ways. First, as experts of synodality, by the structures and processes found in our constitutions. Second, as co-responsible persons immersed in parish and wider church life. And finally, as active participants in the necessary process of formation to this way of proceeding. So this image of the net of the church, of gathering, of the harvest, for me became a recurring symbol. And I believe it has a lot to teach us as we deepen this reflection. We all understand a net, nodes of connection, each connected to the other, a maze of links and spaces, both of which are essential to the net working well. But we all understand that the parts of the net are under varying tension. The net flexes, stretches, and responds to local issues. The links and spaces which give the freedom to move and act are needed. A rigid net would serve little purpose. Its flexibility is essential to its function. The Synod documents hoped for a church that is closer to the lives of her people, less bureaucratic and more relational. But we are also deeply aware that the net also breaks, even shreds apart under the various forces that impact it. It depends on the maintenance of every link, on our links with each other and the effort to nurture and tend those links. It depends on what is the Pope's call to sorority or fraternity in Tutti Fratelli. I am my brother and sister's keeper. When links break, the net no longer functions as intended, and everything breaks down. The final document of the Synod makes more than 100 references to the texts of Vatican II. That is its beginning point. The Synod members were deeply conscious of this link, and its ongoing implementation was part of the very nature of Vatican II's concept of the people of God. This people where everyone has a place and contributes to the church with their skills and talents in whatever way may be needed. Synodality then provides a how through which the church can continue to grow in this understanding of itself as the people of God. So what is the task of those of us in consecrated life in the midst of all of this? This is a process of listening, dialogue, and consensus that is crucial. It is a synodal way where the people of God come together and in common seek the best way forward, each contributing as their gifts, talents, and roles allow. We seek to discern the needs of our neighbor, God's desire, and our response, connecting these facets in the one reality of the church. I believe deeply that we as consecrated persons are people of relationship, brothers and sisters, people linking people to us, to our work, and to the church. It is our task in a very practical way to tend the net of relationships so essential to the function of the church on a personal and individual level, but also on a collective basis. We make those connections even where the church is not present. We connect those coming home. We connect those finding this home for the first time, and those simply looking for care and support. Through our service, we connect to Christians, non-Christians, and those who claim no belief. Like the good fisherman, we tend the daily reality of the net, especially at the fringes where it's most fragile. We weave together the diverse parts of the church and its diverse expressions into a community of faith and action. We work at relationships. We work at bringing people together. We work at finding consensus in the service of all. We work at making the image of God come alive in his people. But a crucial part of this repair of the world and of the net is mercy, forgiveness, and reconciliation. How do we remain in dialogue even with those with whom we disagree? How, in a polarized world, do we work for the building of the kingdom of God together? How do we find common ground to move forward in parish life, in our works, in our apostolic ministries? The final document calls religious to become active in the local church, to model, encourage, form, and guide the necessary growth in persons, in experience, in dialogue, in decision-making and taking. And I quote, "Synodality invites and sometimes challenges consecrated life and movements to enter more fully into relationship with the local churches within which they live and work." I see this as an essential challenge, to not hide in our ministries or in our communities, but to remember we are always brother and sister in the church, in our ministries and beyond. We are constantly called into that relationship as brother and sister with each person we meet, with each problem we encounter. We are people of relationship. We are the net weavers and tenders. We are those who have the task in a very personal way to weave the net of the church, one relationship at a time. That net, which in the gospel resurrection appearance brings all to Jesus abundantly. Yes, we live in a world that builds walls, that creates barriers, that is fearful of those different from us. But I believe more than ever in our essential role as brothers and sisters in the church, especially in a church desiring to grow in its synodality, in its fraternity and its sorority. As well, we are charged with moving beyond the institutional church, as builders of relationships, as weavers of the net of the kingdom that is so much wider than us alone or our ministries, or even any narrow vision of church that we may hold. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our brother Mark for sharing, and it's such a rich image, the net, and that invitation to us to weave the net of the church, one relationship at the time. And so listening to both Mark and Leticia as she brought powerful images to us as well, of what both vulnerability and strength look like, and what the call is to our church today. Just invite you for a minute of silence. What's percolating in you? What's moving in you? What's inviting you? And you may have a question or two or a comment for either of our second half of the presenting group. So thank you. One minute. So just to allow the people here to have a few minutes, but also those of you who are writing to have a few minutes to just on the chat, if you would, things that are coming forth, and those of you who are here, maybe just to one or two people near you for the next 2 minutes, what's moving in you, what's resonating, and then we'll bring it to both Mark and Leticia. So just a few minutes to just talk to each other. I invite you back here online and invite people who are in person. If anyone has comments or questions, I'm reading a lot here that says, thank you for these rich images, not only of the Synod, but also of Advent. So there's something that's in motion here. But do any of you have comments, questions, things you would like to offer? There's a lot of richness here, and particularly here to Leticia and Mark, and then we'll move it to everyone. Please, we have someone here. Thank you.
What gives me joy and hope is that the synodal structure will give everyone the possibility of responsibly contributing to the life and mission of the Church. Of course, there are different roles, but by baptism we are all equal, and we share the equal responsibility. When things come out well, we equally merit the reward. But at the same time, when things go wrong, we must also equally share the responsibility. what I feel is that to make the synodal structure, the synodality, the synodal process a reality, we need to start from our own communities. For this, we need to introduce in our formative program a specific formation for synodal living and synodal mission.
Thank you. Thank you. Another comment.
It's a question for Leticia. En español. Leticia, llegando a
Leticia, coming to your place of work not too long ago, how, at least a practical example, like practical things, in what practical way are you thinking about bringing down the synod from Rome to California? Perhaps you haven't had any time, but perhaps you're getting ideas, a practical example of what you're thinking about to bring it down. Yes, thank you for your question. I can give you several examples that we're already doing from the second day. First of all, it's about sitting down with the bishop and talking to him about what happened during the General Assembly, the document, and inviting the bishop to firstly read this document in a prayerful way and to reflect on it, asking God for the further step to be made for the diocese. We also met with the curia, the bishop and I. We gave them a copy of the document in a symbolic way also. That is the voice of the Spirit that we are hearing through these last few years. It's the message of the Spirit, the call for the Church. So, with three basic questions, reflecting on the document, praying with it, which following step is it indicating for my diocese, for the group that I belong to, for the committee or consultation organization? For example, the Council of Presbyters, the Curia, the vicars, in every vicariate. So we bring it down like this. In February, we're going to have a meeting with the entire leadership at the diocese. We're going to discuss this all day. And also, one day before that, we're going to meet with Consecrated Life to discuss the document. So we take it step by step. This implementation is going to take years. It's about changing, learning, unlearning, and all of this takes time. But practically, that's how we're going to do it. And from the General Vicar, the Bishop, and myself as Chancellor, as we are at the front of the leadership, it's about exemplifying, modeling a leadership style that is synodal. So it's about transforming ourselves and knowing that we cannot demand of others what we are not projecting. So I think that is our way. I don't know whether I'm answering, but that is what is practical for us. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm trying to see if there's anything online, but if not, please.
Grazie.
Sì, grazie.
Sì. Sono Sor Sonia, una francescana alcantarina.
Sister Sonia, a Franciscan from Italy. I wanted to really thank you. It has been extremely rich, all this contribution. I mean, you had months of work, and we, in these couple of hours, we've been listening to you, but we have received a lot. I must say we're a bit almost like overwhelmed by the amount of wonderful information. I would like to ask a question, not too pessimistic, but we as religious sisters and women, we are a little bit struggling. We feel a little bit tired in our relationship and collaboration with priests in our churches. I don't know if this is the case elsewhere, but it's a bit of let's say, dominated, or if you allow me this word, in the churches. I don't know if it's the same everywhere, but in our daily lives, I'm vicar, general vicar. I speak and I have relationships with bishops in the parishes, but it's very difficult to be synodal. It's very difficult to listen. It is very difficult to move forward, even a little step at a time. Could you encourage us? I mean, the Synod seems to is very ambitious, but does that, if you have to drill that, I mean, can you actually percolate that in our daily lives? I'm not really sure it's that easy. I don't want to sound too pessimistic, but I mean, this is a bit our reality.
No, thank you for that. There's one other person who's online who will ask a question, so we'll take both of them together. And I think we could actually ask your question of everyone. So Jean, please, your question or comment. You're muted.
Thank Mark for that image of the net. It's very practical and it's very connected. I work here at the UN in New York, and I'm speaking on behalf of people who are marginalized and feel themselves marginalized. But I think in your description, Mark, we can bring them into this net. And I think you talked about us as religious being listening and in dialogue with the needs of our neighbors. And as I said, I work at the UN, so it's important to bring that synodal process into where the powers that be are. And I think that's really important. So it's just a comment to say that touched me during the session.
Thank you for that. And I think that's a lens that people were trying to bring, that this goes ad extra, that it goes forward. So, but the question we had was just an honest question of, it can be very difficult in places. And so knowing that this is a conversion process for everyone, what might people want to offer in this about going forward? It's not only an Advent practice, clearly. But Mark, would you like to begin with anything? And then we'll open it to, I think, everybody on this panel.
Throw me under this bus. Okay. For me, I think it's about every day. I think the puzzle is we try to go, and we're going to change the church tomorrow, and I don't think that's going to happen. But I think we can change parts of it. We can change where we have influence. I just got back from Mozambique. As it happens, the diocese where our brothers are has no bishop at the moment. So between working with another order of sisters, with the Chancellor, we're moving forward. We're discussing a new project. The sisters are going to take over the girls' dormitory at our school. And we're all working together. How do we find the money? Where do we do this? What do we do about it? So I think it's possible where we are. I think it's possible with the people we know. And if we can build those relationships, I think there are ways to grow. Will it be easy? No. The Synod wasn't easy either. I mean, we had people from all different countries with all different perspectives, from patriarchs to bishops to lay people to anyone. But we found a way to work together. And I think that's the challenge. The challenge that the Synod document puts before religious is, you're there. What are you going to do? Not wait for someone else to change the world, but how can you initiate that dialogue? How can you initiate that process? How can, as someone said, how do we make sure our own processes are synodal? How our own decision-making reflects this? Because if we can't model it, no one's going to follow either. Because the first question is going to be, do you do this? And I don't know that we're perfect at it. The Synod document says we're experts in synodality. I'm not sure that's true, but I'll happily work at it with someone else.
Oui, merci pour cette question qui fait effectivement.
Thank you so much for this question that really talks about the realities. But the reality is the starting point, the point of departure of the church. We can have a lot of ideas, say that everything is working, everything is fine. We have so many ideas, but the reality is in parallel, is not the same. I would say two things. We have to work at two levels. Because things are in constant change and through experience, how within the collaboration with priests we can open new spaces, new experiences, how do we invite them to discover our modes of doing, our ways of doing. I know in my community we had at heart every time to invite the priests from the local parish just over a regular dinner. The more we work on getting to know each other in a free way, freely, the more we can collaborate in pastoral work. So there's everything that we try to do, just like we did in the Synod, to suggest new experiences, conversations in the Spirit. All of this takes place through experience and not only talks. The second element we should work on is that the change of mentality takes time, it's long, in the society, in the church, and in the culture. Priests do not come from nowhere, they come out from cultures, from societies, from certain families. I've been living here for many years so far, and it's really different from all of my French experience. The way we work here and the way we can work on this is really long-term formation, long-term education, to share, to support each other mutually in this path, and to have also really the long run, like the change of mentality and the reform within the church take really long time. It's a collective task, and while waiting, we cannot leave aside the persons or the people whom we find most difficulty to work with. We have to find people who can support us, sustain us, to really work together.
Penso che sia chiaro.
I think that what you have said is absolutely very clear. The synodal document, and quoting Pope Francis at number 74, the document says clericalism which is promoted by priests but also by laity, somehow is advocating and is perpetrating many of the ill-doing that we are challenging today. So clericalism, as priests are somehow exercising, but which is also promoted by a certain kind of mindset, is certainly not contributing to the life of the church. And so maybe, the Synod was actually underlying and asking that when you do the parish council or the pastoral council at the diocesan level should be compulsory. Because according to canon law, the financial council is let's say, a duty. Because when you speak about money, everybody has to be there. But instead, for some reason, the pastoral council is like an option. It should become compulsory. I have been in 2 or 3 countries and in different posts, but I enjoyed the pastoral council. I discovered very late in my life at the Synod that it was optional, but I always considered that as a mandatory choice. So that is the actual direction we should head towards. The priest is not the leader, the sole leader, but not even the superior general. I think this is one of the conversions we are called to. Thank you.
Leticia, did you want to offer just
Sí.
one or 2 minutes on that? Because you're often working at that level of
solamente
parish.
brevemente, totalmente.
Yes, briefly, I completely agree with everything that was said. From the very simple steps, spend some time, have coffee, have tea, invite to a conversation. But I think that something that the experience offers us is the method of the conversation in the Spirit. I have seen how that helped us all during the General Assembly, how it helped us to bring down barriers little by little. Of course, it was 2 months of exercises over 2 years, but I think that in the local communities, we should little by little leave room to listen to the experience of the other and also open up those spaces for communication, and offering those spaces is very important at the personal level, but also at the community level.
Gracias. There's a lot in this, and I think the challenge is to bring it to the practical. That's why a whole part of the Synod office is also has to look at implementation. So just as in religious life, we can have a wonderful chapter document, but if nothing is implemented, they are simply words. And the work comes not only in the discerning, but then also in making it possible. So at this moment, the church is all being asked to participate. I'm aware, and I just want to offer a few of the comments that came online. Ophelia wrote that what resonates with me is this synodal journey must be in harmony beyond our diversity, because our communities inside and outside are no longer homogeneous, but we can share in harmony through dialogue and acceptance. So Ophelia, you could have been at the Synod, because that unity and diversity and the challenge of that was brought through the whole. Somebody else wrote about, touched by the renewed ecumenical impetus generated by the Synod. And can we go more deeply is the invitation. What does this renewal open us up to? And could this momentum, this ecumenical desire land, also find itself locally? So there's a lot in here that has been touched by what has been said, and I want to thank you for that. We are near the end of our time. It always goes too quickly and profoundly. I do want to offer you a few announcements. This is like the end of Mass of sorts. And without asking for anything but your presence and participation. We don't have a finance council for synodality right here, but it's very much a pastoral and educational one. I do want to thank our 4 panelists for offering your wisdom. It's such a gift, and Leticia also, that you could join us. I want to thank those of you who were able to come here in person. It's wonderful, and there is a little reception so that you can continue to ask questions and engage. And those of you online, thank you so much for coming from across the globe, because it's this that brings the Synod and implementation forth. It's this way of educating ourselves, engaging in the global conversation, listening, and then sharing. So I invite all of you to have 2 conversations between now and January 1st on what you've been hearing. Send the link that we have from 2 weeks ago and for today, send it out. We'll send you also now the final document of the Synod is available. And so in multiple languages online, we'll just send that link again with the documents. We are putting together a resource page, so we might do at least some initial ones, but not all, because right now the key is reading the document. And as you think about the coming 2025, how you might, in your communities, but also widen our tents with a wider group of people, colleagues, brothers and sisters to engage. A few of these point announcements might be helpful to you. Please join us. Put this on your calendar if you don't have it there already. January 7th from 2:30 to 4:30. We'll have two wonderful speakers engage on what do we mean when we talk about a spirituality that we're supposed to live that's called synodality. And so we'll be looking at it from various lenses. One of our Jesuit brothers, Joss Moons, who's done a lot of work on synodality, is going to be one of the speakers. And Sister Laurence Loubier, who's done a lot of work also on synodality and discernment, and is Nathalie's community, will also be joining us. And this will be only online because they'll both be away from Rome. They don't live in Rome speaking. But it could be a wonderful piece that could go into the continuing formation. We are still confirming another date, and that would be to give an overview of the document. So to literally do a good section and a good presentation on the whole, and then invite you to break that open in sections. So that will be late January. We're also doing practice now. We're going to start by seeing if it's sufficient if we do quarterly trainings in multiple languages of conversation in the Spirit. And we would do it so that you'd know not just the method, but what's underneath it. What's the spirit, the spirituality, theology underneath it, but also to give people an experience of it so that you can't only read it, you have to experience it. In some ways, you can't just read about a retreat, you have to go on a retreat. So, and what happened at the Synod is very possible everywhere. And so this, we're really inviting general superiors and councils, provincial teams, your councils. We'd like to very much also invite people who work in formation ministry. And we also want to make this available to the people you think would really benefit from it. So people in your communities. So we will have it in multiple languages. We'll have the 4 dates for the year. We're looking at this quarterly. We'll be doing more in anticipation of the plenary too, but that's a different piece in there. And we are in the planning stages of 2025 and looking, I think a number of you have said, there's a real need to do renewal of religious life in light of the Synod, just as the church is being invited. When the church was invited during Vatican II, of course, religious life, because we're part of it. And so to see where we are, where are the places that are being invited at this point. So we're looking at some on the ground, but also ongoing spaces a few times a month on different topics, from community to looking at the vows, to ministry, collaboration. So there are many of these areas, but we'll do them in pieces. And really, this isn't just for us. I think religious women and men were one of the movers of a lot of what happened post-Vatican II. And at this moment, we have so many lay brothers and sisters, partners in mission, that we have to do this together. we can't. We have Wukwo here. We have all kinds of groups that we're blessed to connect with. So more will be coming. But I do invite you all and our brothers. I think we're hoping more and more this walking together, we witness what women and men can do together as we walk together. So there's a wonderful partnership with USG as well. So in our closing, I just want to thank our delegates. I want to thank our interpreters. I want to thank our communication office and the technical office. All those, Svetlana, who answered the doors. We have our Associate Executive Director, Roxanne Shares, here with us. So thank you for being here as well. And all of you, we ask that we may know that we are praying for one another as we live this Advent season, and as each person keeps saying, we're the ones who can do that little step, that one step at a time. So I want to thank you for everything, and we'll send you some, Therese is going to send you all kinds of communication about what's coming ahead. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Happy Advent, blessed Christmas. Those of you here, please stay for a little bit to just have conversation. And those of you online, we're just opening the sound. So if we could unmute everyone, and if you want to show your faces wherever you are, to just wish each other well. So thank you very, very much. Amen.
Amen.
Merry
Christmas.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Christmas おめでとう。
Muchísimas gracias.
Blessings. ありがとうございました。
Gracias. Thank you so
Thank
much.
Cynthia, we see you. Cynthia Bailey Mans.
Gracias.
Merry Christmas.
Gracias.
Happy Synod. Leticia,
Bye, Noel. Yeah, thank you.